Hello. Hi, Rachel.
Hi.
I wish I could pass you some Tylenol. It looks like you either need a coffee or a Tylenol, maybe a Lortab. What's that?
Coffee.
Coffee. Okay, coffee. Oh, it's that time of day, 3:25. Who else do I have out there? Alva, are you out there?
Yep.
Hello, Alva.
Hello.
Mario, you holding down Woodward? Maybe not yet. Let's see. Cassie and Ashley, are y'all holding it down out there, Guyman?
Cassie is.
Cassie, hello.
Hello.
Now we have both. All right. Well, we are going to talk about seeking safety today. And the cool thing about this particular technique is it is for co-occurring disorders. So if everybody will recall earlier in the semester where we talked about the adverse childhood experiences study and about the high correlation, the high overlap between drug use and trauma, this particular technique brings those two things together. And it's what's nice about it is that you don't have to have a license to deliver it. The authors of the study basically are good with bachelor's degree. They give you a large manual, again, like a lot of these different techniques that we've been discussing. But it's pretty much self-contained into this. So if you go to their 3-day training and get this manual, then you are good to go. You will want to try to be faithful to what they prescribe, or else they don't say that it's going to work. But it's very straightforward. If those of you, in comparison to other type of therapies, if you're thinking about, like, say, trauma-focused, where we spent, that big PRACTICE, that practice model, we talked about, how long and how in-depth, and you go into this trauma narrative and you talk about all these bad things that happened to you. This does not do that. This would be the antithesis of diving deeply into a trauma. It does not want, this particular book and this particular technique does not want to do a deep narrative. It does not want to do a dredging up of a lot of bad things. It's very focused on the here and now, the present time, how you're doing here at the present moment. So it's attractive that way. If you're intimidated by, oh my gosh, I don't think I want to talk to somebody about all the bad things that's happened to them, or I feel like that would overwhelm me. This is very heavy on giving coping skills, on giving resources for people to combat and cope with the anxiety, the flashbacks, the things that happen, the negative feelings that happen with trauma. So we'll get into this today and talk about this. There are 25 sessions that are available for use in this book. So what you can do is, if you're interested in this, you can order this on Amazon and practice it. I'm a trained supervisor in this, so I looked for my DVDs, and I cannot find them anywhere. It actually showed the technique being delivered. So the last time I saw them was 2 years ago, and I think I may have loaned them out to a student, though I'm not for sure. So it is what it is. But we'll get a handle on this and what it looks like. So we're going to have a couple of people, I think at least, demonstrate some seeking safety techniques. But we'll go from here. All right.
It's a cool way of when you loan out stuff to remember who you gave it to.
I do. I have.
Take pictures of them holding it. That way you can go back to the pictures and be like, oh, look.
That's some pretty incriminating evidence. Yeah. I have a sign-out sheet now. It was before I was full-time here, so just kind of haphazardly hand things out. Yeah, sure, you can try this. I don't know. I may have it. I may be falsely accusing somebody, so I may have it somewhere. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at, there's a short PowerPoint that goes with this. And it's not broadcasting yet, so let's try it again. Okay, here it is. So the book looks a lot like that. You can see that online. Pardon? It's so little.
Actual size.
Not actual size. May not be representative of actual size. So, I forgot my research. Okay, it's okay. So, it pulls on this understanding of trauma-informed treatment. So, before we've always, or at least when we talked about the ACE study, we want to stop asking when we're delivering seeking safety, what's wrong, and ask what happened. So, as a counselor, again, this is difficult because we're trained to really delve in and try to understand and work on all this dysfunction. We're going to try to build on strengths with this. We're going to try to build on the here and now, the present, and build from there. So that's one of the good things about this particular model is it's not something, and I think that would be good for your client to know too. So last session, last class period, we talked a lot about self-disclosure about your own style. Am I directive? Am I non-directive? If you're going to utilize this, one thing that may keep people coming back, because if somebody comes to therapy, I mean, I've had this happen, and you're like, one of the things we're probably going to have to talk about are your traumas. Nope, peace, see ya, I'm out. And they don't want, because it's that burdensome. So this particular technique is not one where, and I think I'd say we're gonna cover this. This is very present focused. It's not going to have you talk about deep aspects of your trauma. It's going to focus on here and now and being safe. And the title really says it all. You are seeking safety in relationships, in where you live, in your actions, in whether or not you're ingesting substances. It really is focused on safe behavior. And so there are 3 stages. There are 3 patient stages as you go through the 25 different session designs that are in here. And you don't have to do them all. It's not, Josh, your technique earlier was like a 5-session design. You don't have to do all 25. You can actually modify this to suit your individual client's needs. So you can pick out the sections that would be relevant to them, use those, and if there's something that's not relevant, or you're like, I don't think they'll get anything from that.
Can you jump around?
You can jump around. You don't have to go in sequence. So if there's like something has happened and you feel like, grounding is like it's like a coping skill for, fleeting thoughts, for just really strong feelings of anxiety. There are grounding exercises in session 4 or number 4. You could pull that out first if this person is just overwhelmed by anxiety. We got to get you something today. You can't go to your pharmacist. You can't get a prescription, but I can give you something that you can work on today to help you feel better, to bring your anxiety down.
I worked with one clinician that didn't necessarily use seeking safety, the whole theory, but used a lot of worksheets from it.
Yeah.
To copy out for clients to use if it went with something they were talking about. And she really utilized the heck out of it. Yeah,
the one I was kind of referencing when I was talking about a client fleeing from therapy, knowing that they're going to have to talk about painful memories, painful stuff in their past. The one lady that is really fresh in my mind, she really took to this too. She really took to, okay, well, yeah, I'll do that. I'm not going to talk about this, but I will do this, this, and this. And so, she was, and it was a comorbid thing. It was PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and a very significant substance use disorder. Her substance of choice was alcohol. And so she would get blackout drunk every time she touched it. And usually drive, unfortunately, for everybody. Anyway, so this is really focused on safety. That's the foundation for all the therapeutic work here. It's present focus and safety right here and now. So that's the first patient stage, is establishing safety. The second stage that we'll work on is mourning. And so even though you don't have to go into like dark graphic details of traumatic incidents, you will have some recall. I mean, people will have some recall of, what led them here. What's causing you pain. What's causing you pain? What's causing you anxiety in the here and now? And so some of that will, again, it's not deep, but it's dredging along the surface to see, okay, well, what can we do about that? So after achieving safety, the patient delves into the past in some detail. And I think I'd qualify that. It's not in full detail. It's not like a narrative. And faces extreme feelings of pain. And it even says that in there. It says, do not share in very much detail about the trauma. And so facing, at least being able to name it and then identify that pain and mourning comes along with this. So transform the story of shame and humiliation. A lot of times traumas are shaming. People carry guilt into one of dignity and virtue. So, and then the last of the therapy comes into reconnection. Before you go into this mourning part of this, you would want to have a very firm foundation of coping skills. In other words, the client is going to have to really be solid in their use of coping with anxiety, coping with pain, because if you start to go there, a lot of times people are going to, okay, what takes that pain away? Substances, most times, many times. So you want to make sure that person has a firm foundation. And then reconnection. So after working through mourning and loss, the patient emotionally reconnects with life in the present, establishing stable relationships, a career, altruistic activities, and a capacity to develop meaningful life goals, creating a new identity. Okay.
Could you give an example of how you transform the story of shame and humiliation into one of dignity and virtue? I'm not sure that I really understand that.
So that's really kind of, I'm going to go over some of the sessions, some of the session topics. And so what it does is throughout several of the sessions, it really tries to empower the person to acknowledge, that they're in control of their situation right now. The self-efficacy concept that we've talked about, it's very cognitive behavioral in its approach. And so one of the, can I put your question on hold and hopefully get to it throughout the course of the class? Yeah. Okay. If I don't answer it, come back to it, please.
Okay.
But hopefully, looking at some of the session content, you'll see that's one of the goals, though. So the patient stages. Yes, Brittany.
So what if you end up having a patient that when you do get into the mourning process, they find that starting to talk or starting to name that trauma is really helpful and therapeutic, and they want to dive into that?
So then you probably want to divert away from this, and if this is the only thing you were trained in, you'd need to find someone else.
Okay. Gotcha.
So if they really start to heal and want to go there, I would suggest that needs to happen.
So just go with it, but maybe jump to another technique.
What's amazing about people and painful experiences, we will try to heal ourselves because we will replay over and over and over and over the painful things that happened to us. I had one lady who had a horrible experience happen to her, and she wrote the details down again and again and again, and like over and over, just trying to remember every little thing, trying to make sense out of it. And in a way, you think about the trauma narrative from TFCBT, that re-exposure, that gradual re-exposure is what we try to do in therapy by continually to help that person, but in a safe place where they're not reliving it, where they have some control over the emotions. And so it's you have intrusive thoughts, recurring thoughts of the event. That's one of the PTSD diagnoses. And so you try to, and I've seen people work, and not everybody retains the PTSD diagnosis, and not everybody gets a PTSD diagnosis after trauma, after an experience, after a bad experience. Some people are able to come to terms with it somehow themselves, and not have the reliving, not have the nightmares. It's a painful thing to remember, but all the symptoms of PTSD aren't there. And so we're kind of wired to survive. It's strange that way. We're kind of wired to try to make sense out of these painful things because it's got to have some meaning for my future life because it hurt that bad. So, we're resilient. We know there's a reason that why there's 7.3 billion of us on the planet is we're pretty resilient. And coming into this field where we're helping other people. If folks are stuck and it's causing them dysfunction, it's causing them, pain where they are, then that's where we, with this kind of knowledge, with the things that we talk about in here, can help move that person forward in a better trajectory, in a better life force. And that's really what this is about. This also recognizes, this is a funny thing about trauma, because I'm talking about replaying. This book recognizes that people tend to recreate their traumas too. There's a statistic that was pulled out in the ACE study that said that the incidence of rape increased by 900% if you've had 4 or more adverse childhood experiences. And so I remember the audience asked, was that stranger rape? And they didn't go into that type of detail. But to me, that's, somehow there's a more dangerous environment that people find themselves in after childhood traumas. And so this book really takes the stance that people tend to recreate the traumas that they've been through. Whether it's conscious, whether it's unconscious, it tends to happen. And so it wants to break that chain. It wants to break that cycle and get people into a different path. I'm sorry, I diverged a little bit there. Reconnection. So reconnection happens, I think, throughout the course of this, again. And mourning may happen throughout the course of this. Because, like Josh had asked, is there a particular sequence? You can pull this together in whatever sequence you see best fitting your client and your situation. And it can be done in a group, or it can be done individually. Okay, so those were the patient stages. So remember that for our exam. Remember safety, mourning, and reconnection. And then so we go into the therapist stage. So we as the therapist have different stages. Let me see here. Chelsea, would you mind taking us through the safety part of the therapist there?
The therapist empowers the patient to regain control, self-efficacy, helps the patient identify cues of who, what, and where are safe, teaches coping skills that may never have been learned in childhood, assesses the extent and impact of a substance abuse and develops a plan of abstinence, closely monitors the patient's current substance use and craving, and provides psychoeducational rehab services about the diagnosis of PTSD and substance use disorder.
Okay. So this does have information to help teach clients about PTSD, traumatic stress disorder, and about substance use disorders. So it's not as in depth as like the neural transmission and things like that, but it does talk about addiction and post trauma. So there's some teaching that goes along with it. Teaching skills. I mean, a lot of times people haven't ever really learned how to manage bad situations or bad relationships. And one of the things for folks that want to and need to pursue abstinence, say that somebody is let's say they've got to get their kids back through child welfare, or they're under supervision like probation, and so they need to pass UAs. This model really stresses abstinence. And so each week you'll check in with the client to see if they've actually maintained abstinence, been able to refrain from using substances. Okay. Erica, do you mind taking us through the quote at the top?
The therapist is active and directed, but always tries to give a patient control rather than controlling the patient. The therapist seeks to understand the patient's self-destructive behaviors as symbolic or literal reenactments of initial abuse.
Okay, so there it's that reenactment of the initial abuse. It could be symbolic or literal, reenactment of what happened initially. So one of the things I'd like to bring to light here, if somebody just wants to sit and listen, that is okay. There is no pressure, especially like in a group setting where people don't like to talk. I mean, each one of us, Woodward, Alva, Ponca, Enid, each one of us are in a pretty small community where people know each other. And so if somebody came to like a group with it and they didn't want to talk about their own stuff, they don't have to. And so like say, well, what if their probation officer is asking me? Well, they're coming. That's really what the model is asking for them to come, because just by learning and watching and observing other people, there's learning that takes place. Here's some things that the therapist does not do. Kelsey, could you take us through these, please?
The therapist does not offer dynamic interpretations, confront defenses, focus the patient on examining the relationship between patient and therapist, seek insight or personality change, or confront an abuser or family member who deny the trauma.
Okay.
What does that mean with confront defenses?
So let's say that somebody starts to get like, so like defenses would be like, I'm rationalizing. Well, you know why I did that? It's just because so-and-so, they treated me wrong, so that's why I stole that stuff. Or, you don't confront people like you'd be tempted to in a regular session with somebody, if somebody's talking about justifying stealing from somebody, you would want to, or I would probably feel like I'd need to dig through that and really try to change. Why are you wanting to steal from somebody? Was that the right thing to do? This doesn't want to go there. This wants to stay focused on the present, wants to stay focused on the here and now, wants to really look at safe behaviors. What the author, Najovitz, would say, that would come through insight later. By staying engaged, really this is a great model for people that are really early in recovery, because they can do behaviors. They can do little behaviors, but they don't have a lot of insight. Think about that early neurological damage that we discussed from folks that have done like meth for a long time, where all those neurotransmitters and connections are gone, and it's taken a long time for the brain to heal. This would be good for those folks because they don't have a whole lot of insight. It'd
be hard to do, especially if you're like use CBT, right?
Yeah,
CBT does. Right?
You confront irrational beliefs, but again, what the author of this would say is that that's putting that off. That hopefully that through this process, that person is going to eventually come to the self-insight that, yeah, that probably was wrong. So, yeah, it really, and there are times in this, there's a part in the check-in where you really can't respond at all. I mean, your hands are tied where you cannot really respond with any type of explanation or like we do with motivational interviewing, maybe try to reframe. You let that person have whatever they said. So it's a different. Each one of these has its own little different feel and components. Again, this is I think the textbook is like $47. I mean, it's kind of pricey, but maybe it's less on Amazon or something. But if you wanted this for your own practice, you could just go out and buy it and use it, as long as you read through it and do it responsibly.
The way I've seen it is, it's seeking safety, but it's also pretty safe for the clinician because it doesn't require a lot from you. You're not going to get very sensitive or very vulnerable in it. It's some tools to use that aren't going to put yourself or them at risk.
I agree.
Didn't you say that you got like specialized in it, or you took training to be specialized in seeking safety?
Yeah, I've had like 3 trainings. Really, what the authors say is that somebody could pick this up, read it, and deliver it. They would prefer that you get trained, but this is out there available for consumption if you want it. So it's more teaching than it is. Okay, I'm going to do in-depth therapy with you. Lay on the couch, tell me about your mom. That's kind of what this slide is talking about. You're not going to offer dynamic interpretations. You're not going to interpret somebody's dreams, doing seeking safety. You're going to let that client be where they are and try to give them tools to survive where they are and become safe.
Is it as much in depth like on training as like ACRA is?
No. ACRA's much more in. So this is something that honestly you guys can go out and get and buy, and then deliver. This is not something that you need to go through a 6-month supervision where you're recording yourself. Now, if I'm supervising you, I want to do a little feedback and make sure you're being faithful and not doing things in a bad way, that you're not taking off with your own. That's one of the things is you have to be faithful to it. Or they say it's not seeking safety. And let's go a little bit further. Hopefully it'll make a little more sense as we go along. So we don't confront defenses. We don't examine the relationship between patient and therapist, like transference and countertransference. And we don't confront an abuser or family members who deny the trauma. It's all on the client's safety. So here's what the therapist. So in the safety stage, these 2 slides are devoted to what the therapist does. So then here's the therapist in the morning stage. Liz, do you mind taking this one?
Sure.
Since it hopefully will address your question a little bit.
Warning, a therapist is a witness and an ally, helps the patient face the devastation inflicted by trauma and substance abuse, elicits a life history, insight, personality change, and exploration of underlying issues.
So, whereas we don't go into graphic details, we do want a person to kind of think back about their life and think about patterns, think about times when they were safe, when they weren't safe, but not necessarily have to dredge up everything. Just kind of taking a look at their life as a whole, and helping it to help. By doing this, you hope to create meaning through that collaboration, and really just being there to almost hold a mirror up at that point for the client to work through. And then thirdly, here are some of the things that the clinician does. Whitney, do you mind reading Reconnection for us?
The therapist supports efforts to create a new life, helps process trial and error attempts at new roles and activities, helps establish new goals, and evaluation possible confrontation of the abuser.
Okay, so in this reconnection phase, you would want the client to have had some healing, to have had some stable time, hopefully some sober time. And the good thing about this is you'll check in each week to see progress, and you'll make notes yourself. And so trial and error attempts at new roles and activities. So they'll come back the next week, well, how did that go? How did that go since you went to the coffee shop instead of the bar? Or tell me how that went, that you reached out to your aunt who you hadn't spoken to in a long time. Tell me how that went when you went and applied for that job. Or were you able to get a job? Now this, possible confrontation with abuser, that's only if the client comes to that. So if it's an unsafe situation, it puts him in an unsafe situation, nope, don't do that. So here is the session format. It has its own really kind of rigid structure. You don't want to deviate from this if you're actually doing the model. The authors of this are very particular that you do these 4 things in this sequence. So if you deviate from this, they would say you're not doing Seeking Safe. So if you have a group, if you have a large group, I don't think I would really implement this with folks over like 6. I mean, you could maybe press it to 8 people, but 6 I would say 4 to 6 would be a good number to have if you're going to do this in a group setting. And so you do a check-in. And there's every time you do Seeking Safety, every beginning of every session, you have everybody do these 5 questions. So, for instance, we go to Rachel. Could you take us through the 5 questions?
How are you feeling? What good coping have you done? Any substance use or other unsafe behavior? Did you complete your commitment? Community resource update.
Okay, so there's 5 things. One is, how are you feeling? And whatever they say is good. You don't interrupt them. What good coping have you done? Well, I went and ran outside instead of drinking a beer. Okay, great. Any substance use or other unsafe behavior? Yeah, unfortunately, I did have a beer after I ran. Or whatever they say.
But as a therapist, this sounds like an opportunity, or this sounds like one of those sessions, depending on like how the client is, for there to be like a lot of, okay, like stuff like that. Like, how did you come? Oh, I went outside and ran. Okay, and then did you do anything else? Yeah, then I went back in and had a couple beers, and you're just like,
no, you have to leave it. Seriously.
I mean, how do you leave it at that?
No reaction.
It's tough. That's one of the.
I'd be like, okay.
The gut reaction. Now, where you wouldn't leave it is if somebody said they're suicidal, now and they're actively suicidal. Now you'd have, or going to kill somebody.
So the best thing to respond to them is thank you for sharing, and just keep moving on.
So yes, thank you for sharing.
Glad you're here.
It is. It's so tough. I mean, if you want to, I've taught this before, and it's really like people have. How do you do that? And it's just you have to. That's their model. Because what would happen? Let's say you had 6 people in a group, and 4 of them relapsed over the week. How long would you be doing check-in?
Forever.
The entire time.
You just do check-in the entire time.
Do you get, like, in groups, like where they start running their, how the groups kind of run themselves?
Yes.
Do you get the other people, like, confronting them, the other members that have,
Good question.
mental abstinence for...
If you have good group buy-in, the other members will.
You don't have to. You just let them do it.
Yep. And normally, if there's a
But again, then what if somebody's giving really bad advice? Like, hey, you know what you should do about that? You should start smoking. It really helps take the edge off. What?
Well, you would kind of come back to, is that something we've established as a safe coping skill? I mean, you could just ask that and then move it. You do have license to move it along.
Okay.
You do have license. So let's say that somebody starts to really pine about their experiences like you don't let them go for 10 minutes because each person only has like 5.
Well, and then my
So
mother.
you got to cut it off and move on. So.
Good story. Next.
Yeah. No, okay, I'd like to hear from so-and-so if they'd like to go. And again, you do leave it up to each person. If they don't feel like sharing this week, they don't have to. You don't put them on the spot. They can just sit there.
So then is this type of therapy geared more toward individuals who are willing to change and like wants to be there, or how would you deal with this type of therapy with somebody who doesn't want to do this? Because it seems like it would be really difficult if you are trying to do this with somebody who isn't wanting to change any type of substance abuse.
It's both. It's for people that are engaged and not engaged. Again, it's for folks. To me, looking at this among all of the other models that we've done, it's a good place to just start with people early in recovery. Sometimes people, I'm really big. You've listened to me this whole semester now. I'm really big on neural transmission and understanding what happens in the brain and why things are happening the way they are. A lot of times people just aren't there. They're not ready to hear that. It's not going to land. It's not going to make any difference to them. Pardon?
Too much pruning going on?
Pruning. Oh, yeah, too much. There's been too much pruning. There's been, so there might have been too much. Maybe the attention span's not there. But feeling, because, you'll demonstrate some of the techniques and you'll go through them in the group, in the individual session with them. And so if they feel different after they've been in the group, okay, yeah, I think I am going to talk now. I think I am, they do this with kids that have been suspended from Norman public schools. And they don't even necessarily have to have trauma or substance use issues. If they've been suspended, Norman public schools makes them go to a seeking safety group. And they've seen really great outcomes with kids coming back to school, staying engaged, staying in the group sessions that they start. It gives people really, if you do this well, it gives people a safe place to be. And for folks that are in an environment, sleeping on a couch somewhere, if their parents are yelling, if they've not been in a situation that's really felt calm, there is something deep in here in our humanity that each one of us, that when we get into a place that's safe, we feel good about it and we want to be back there. Think about one of your vacations where you've been, or a time when you felt completely away from everything and the cares are all gone, and that's a good place to be. So
on those Norman, when they kids get expelled or suspended or whatever, they make them do the whole 25 sessions?
Well, they make them
pick in whenever the next group meets and do so many, or
they make them do, I think, 12 or something like that. So it's not like the whole thing, but I think they mandate they go to 12, and they can continue if they want to. So did you complete your commitment? Before every session ends, when you do a checkout, you'll get a commitment for what they're going to do. So there'll be like some homework, a goal that people are going to try to accomplish over the week, and then there'll be a community resource. So reaching out, did you utilize? So thinking about, like, if you didn't have a car, if you utilized public transportation, if you utilized the library, if you utilized, even reached out to a friend and had them help you. It's basically looking for somebody to start making ties in their community that are safe, rather than all these shady connections to drug dealers and people that aren't really good to be around. So the second part of this is a quotation. And so you'll have a brief quote, and so everybody goes around, and again, you don't really confront, you don't dig in. People just give what they see as the main point of the quote. So it only takes a couple of minutes to do the quote. And then there'll be the actual topic. So then this is the most of the session. So you may have 10 to 20 minutes for check-in, and then you'll have probably 30 minutes for the actual session. And you'll have maybe 10 minutes for 5-10 minutes for checkout.
Can you elaborate on the quotation part?
Yeah. I'm gonna actually take us through some of this, what it looks like.
Do I? Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just quote that's relevant.
Oh, let me just use this rather than I'll pull what I gave you guys. So it has some guidelines on here. So here's the Seeking Safety format worksheet. So again, this is something that you can print off and use. And so it asks the clinician, it's kind of a grading sheet, what I gave you. So this is what I would use if I were observing somebody. Did they ask the client to read the quote? What's the main point of the quote? Did the discussion last just a couple of minutes? So it's really just trying to make sure they're faithful to the model. You have to use handouts. The handouts are mandatory. You can't not use the handouts. The patient has to have something, the client has to have something they can touch, feel, take with them. Let's see here. What else do I have? So here's an actual session. So this session is asking for help. So this is taken from the book. So if you wanted to read this, you could. Let's just go through this. So, Brittany, could you read for? And let me make it a little bit bigger. The summary.
Sure. Each of the disorders, PTSD and substance abuse, leads to problems in asking for help. Today's topic encourages patients to become aware of their need for help and provides guidance on how to do so effectively.
Okay. Do you want to take us through orientation, Nikki?
Sure. It feels like the telephone weighs 1,000 pounds. I lose whether I get help or not. If I get help, I feel guilty. If I don't, I feel humiliated and alone. How hard is it to ask for help? I think it's easier to give up cocaine than to ask for help. Everyone in my life has hurt me one way or another. I guess I'll have to try to trust. It's not easy. I can't take any more hurt.
I think that third quote is pretty telling. It's easier to give up cocaine than to ask. I mean, literally, people are terrified of reaching out to other people. I mean, they might know something about me. It puts you in a very vulnerable state, especially if you're beaten down and you've been isolated from people that haven't used. It is a very intimidating prospect. Let me see. How about Jessica? Do you mind reading this paragraph here? Can you see it well enough?
Yeah. For both PTSD and substance abuse, others, help is essential. It has been said the power of drugs equals for the need for help. They are as closely related as supply and demand, and economics as inseparable as pressure and volume and behavior gases. The gun is pointed at my head. Get help or die. Similarly, for severe PTSD, it has been said that healing can take place only in the context of relationships.
Okay. There are good reasons why patients may find it hard to reach out for help. They may have had no one to trust while growing up. They may feel a need to keep an image as someone strong. I find that a lot. That's a big deal. They may have learned that asking for help evokes punishment. Many patients with PTSD, sufficient help was not available at the time of the trauma, and they may feel unable to seek help now when it is more available to them. Substance use may have come to seek only help they could get. Some patients may have sought help from systems that failed them, such as treatment systems ignorant about PTSD or substance use, or legal systems that may have punished them rather than providing treatment. For a description of one's patient's dilemma in asking for help, see a patient story, why it's hard to ask for help at the end of this topic. So it goes through what your session format will look like. So it gives you that introduction, kind of the spirit behind what you want to do in this session. So again, the check-in, quotation, relate the topic to patients' lives. So ask the patients to look through the handout. So we'll do that in just a second. And then help patients relate the skill to current and specific problems in their lives. And then you'll do the checkout. So here's the session content, the goals. Let me see here. Christina, what are the goals for this session?
Discuss effective ways to ask for help, rehearse how to ask for help, explore patients' experiences in asking for help.
Okay. So here's some ways to relate this to patient life. So you'll want to role play things. Role play current and real life situations that patients raise. So, for example, you might say, role play the last time you used a substance. Whom could you have called? What could you have said? Other role plays ideas include tell your therapist you don't feel safe. Okay, how would you tell your therapist? Because again, it's not going into depth. That's a recognition there that this is not going into deep detail. So it has the expectation here that people would also go see a therapist individually. Although, if you're doing therapy, you're welcome to use this, but you would not call it seeking safety if you would then go into deep detail of what's going on. Tell your therapist you don't feel safe. Call a friend when you are feeling lonely. So there's a lot of things. It gives you examples on things to role play. And here's the approach sheet. So it gives you examples for a lot of discussion questions. So you have a lot of examples here. Are there any successes you've had in asking for help? What made those possible? What happens when you don't ask for help? Why might PTSD and substance abuse make it hard? So you get to sample these questions. You get to pick the ones what you would want. So it gives you ideas for your session, how you would want to, approach this with your client.
So what do you say back to when you ask those questions? You just say like, okay, because it's pretty much you just want them to talk.
So come again. What was that?
So like you said before, like whatever they say is kind of what goes. You don't really like say, oh, you should be doing it this way. So for these questions, what do you say?
Yeah, I see where you're going with that. So you would probably ask them to elaborate, because at this point you're into the 30-minute, the meat and potatoes of the session. So you spend about 10 minutes in check-in, a couple minutes on the quotation. So 30 to 40 minutes is going to be discussion. So yes, you do want to encourage them to talk and answer those. So if they appear receptive, then you might ask them to clarify. Well, tell me a little bit more about that. Here is an appropriate time to ask some more clarification, but it's not a time to really. You could ask questions, but it's not. Well, that doesn't sound like it'd work out. You don't become derogatory. You don't go Dr. Phil on them. You don't get like sarcastic. You stay, because you want the whole group to feel like whatever they share, whatever they're bringing to the table, whatever their thoughts are, this is an okay place to share those, and no matter what it is. Now, if somebody, like we alluded to, if somebody says they're going to kill somebody or themselves, you want to meet with that person after the session and make sure the proper steps are taken to ensure safety. But this is like it's not a time to really browbeat somebody. That's not what this model is. Did that help, Liz?
Yeah.
Okay, good question. So yeah, you'll want them to. I would say you could ask follow-up questions here in this section.
Okay.
And a lot of times, if the group's running well, the other members will jump in and say things where you don't have to. It's kind of like Nikki said, you don't necessarily have to have the most skill as a therapist when you're doing this. So out loud rehearsal is typically most effective. Let's see here. Encourage patients to instruct people in their lives about the kind of help they need. It may be safest to start with concrete physical help rather than emotional help. I would definitely agree with that statement. So there's just a lot of things in here to again, you can see why they say, take the manual and run, because they give you a lot to think about for each one of these sessions. So each one of these sessions, this is one of 25 sessions where they're giving you advice on how to run your session. So the folks that are working in Bill Johnson, if you've got safety's a tough place if you're incarcerated. I mean, if you're so let's think about Bill Johnson and think about the population you work with. So folks that work there. Where do you think that they would rate their safety just in the facility on a 10-point scale? 10 being nothing bad could ever happen to me. 1 being I'm probably going to get killed tomorrow. Where would they rate their safety?
Like 7 or 8. Yeah.
So pretty high. So I've been there. So the beds they still have all the bunks out in the middle of the area where there's like not private cells or anything like that.
Not a lot of violence.
I guess
Not a lot of violence. If you compared that with Crabtree, what do you think? I got some laughs at that. Bill Johnson I've heard is a better place to go to if you're incarcerated because it is a safer type of facility.
Better than Holdenville.
Or Holdenville.
How do you deal with I'm calling you from a payphone and I need help right now, I'm going to kill myself?
So tough cases?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
So which one was that?
I'm calling you from a payphone.
Oh, and I need help right
It's a
now.
payphone.
Yeah. Mario says, what's a payphone? Yeah, when's the last time anybody's seen a payphone?
When you find them, they never work.
Yeah.
I like how the class is immediately like, well, why are you at a payphone?
So
We
somebody's
have
on
one
the...
I was
ahead.
going to say, we have a payphone in Goodwill. Just saying.
I like as a therapist, you're like, why are you at a payphone?
I'd be like, where in the payphone?
That's weird.
Yeah, I haven't seen one in a while, but yeah, you could be on somebody's. Let's say it's a cell phone. What would be the appropriate thing to do? What would you do?
Don't do it.
Ladder up assessment.
Do what?
A ladder up assessment.
Ladder assessment.
Ladder up assessment.
Ladder up assessment. What other kind of things might one do?
Ask their location.
Keep them talking.
Keep them talking. Keep them talking.
While you're dialing.
Try to assess.
911.
Yes. What else?
What's the ladder up assessment?
So you want to assess the threat. You want to assess the. So if you're in a place where you can actually do this, assess the actual threat of them going through. Where are they at? What would they do? What are they considering?
Okay.
So
finding out like if they have a plan.
What's your plan? Where are you at right now? So you try to ask questions. Try to engage. Has anybody ever taken crisis intervention out here?
No, but I want to.
Okay, yeah, it's a good class. You should take it. It does help. It helps you feel once you're out in the field. It helps you feel a lot more prepared to deal with this type of situation. So, yeah, Josh, if they're I've got a gun, it's loaded. Yeah, you need to have somebody call 911. Okay, where are you at? Well, I'm not going to tell you. You need to stay on the phone with me. Just keep them. Be that 911 operator and keep them talking. Keep them talking. Keep them with you. That's the main goal. Until
You don't go.
Huh?
You don't go to where they're at, do you?
No. You need to have help. You need to have the 911 is the appropriate thing.
What kind of things do you say and ask to keep them engaged on the phone?
At a crisis text line, a lot of times we'll be like, okay, you have the pills. Can you put them in the other room while we talk? Can you step away for them? Can you tell me that you'll stay on the phone with me for however long, or things like that.
Yeah. Keep them engaged. Whatever you can think of to talk about. If you run out of ideas, keep talking.
Just be real with them.
Yeah, and that's true. Don't.
What's the last thing you ate? I mean, sometimes even stupid things like that.
Yeah. Especially if you can divert, if they'll grab onto that.
It was Frosted Flakes.
Yeah, you're good.
I just like the tiger on the box.
So here's something, patient story why it's hard to help. Here's the things that you would actually give out in your session. So this was all for the therapist to know. So here's the actual handout. So the quotation. Cassie, could you read the quotation for me, please?
And the trouble is, if you don't risk anything, risk even more.
Okay, what's the main point of that quote?
Sometimes if you don't risk something and do something, the consequences of that could be even more dire than what you would have risked by just doing whatever the original thing is.
What else? Anybody have another thought? I would agree. Yeah.
If you don't ask for help, then the consequences of that can cost you your life. You know, it's
I
like
agree
you
with
don't,
that too.
if you don't risk being embarrassed because you're going through something that is life-threatening, then you're risking your life by not reaching out and asking for help.
Good answer. So, any other thoughts? That right there, what Brittany and Mario did, that's what the quotation section is supposed to look like. It's just supposed to be short. It's just supposed to be how it reflects off of people, and then you move into the session. So we role played. Everybody did the check in. Okay, so I'm handing this out. Here's handout number 1. Okay, asking for help. So if I were running this group, I just have people go around. Ashley, do you mind reading the first 4 main points?
It is very common to have difficulty asking for help if you have PTSD and substance abuse. You must get help from others to recover. No one can do it alone. In learning to ask for help, start small. Practice on safe people with simple requests. Try to ask for help before a problem becomes overwhelming, but you can call any time, before, during, or after a hard time.
Okay, thank you. So I'd have people, you can either have people read them, you can give people a few minutes to look over them individually and pick out and say, would anybody like to share one of these with the group? You know, there's different approaches to being able to deliver this. So tell me a little bit more why learning to ask for help may feel awkward at first.
They haven't asked for help before.
Yeah.
Something new.
Yeah. So if you've never asked for help before, how do you know how?
It may make you feel powerless or less in control.
Absolutely.
Might be embarrassing.
It makes you feel weak.
It does. You're right. Asking for help makes you feel less than.
Yeah,
anytime.
because you're having to admit that you can't do it by yourself, and that's hard for a lot of people.
Absolutely. So for folks that have been, on the street or having to pull themselves up, admitting weakness is a hard thing to do. And you may look at somebody and think, man, that person is helpless. But if you went and talked to them, that's the last thing they're going to project. So, when asking for help, be gentle. No demands, threats, or insults. If there is no one in your life to ask help from, work on building a support network. And so you could use these things to stimulate conversation. So this is where people dig in and they go, you can see where it goes into a little bit of depth, but there's not a real dredging up. Well, tell me about the worst thing that happened to you when you asked for help. You're trying to build on strings. I guess you could go there, but you would probably want to stick with the guidelines that are on the paper.
Could you also do a little bit of assertiveness training with it? Because some people, they try to ask for help when they are embarrassed, but in a lot more of a subtle way, like more of a gesture or something. Could you also work with people who do little things to ask for help? Could you do a little bit of assertiveness training to help them learn to verbalize needing help and stuff? Because a lot of times, unless you're paying really close attention, sometimes people are trying to ask for help and we just miss it because it's so subtle.
I would agree with that. So if somebody, I'd ask people, well, what would be an inappropriate way to ask for help, or how if somebody asks for help and they didn't get it. Try to give me an example of somebody asking for help and not being able to get it. And so you're bringing out something like that. So you would want to do that in the group, but you spoke to the assertiveness training, and yes, you would want to actually role play this. So what is something that's going wrong in somebody's life? So you would ask this in the group, tell me about something that somebody needs help with this week. And it could be, I'm not going to have enough money for my gas. It's getting cold outside, and I got a shut-off notice. So, and that's a safety issue, guys. I mean, that's what this is about. It's about staying safe. So my gas is going to be shut off before I meet here next session. So somebody, you don't always have to take the lead. So if that comes out in a group, okay, so what could you do? What could she do?
There's resources in the community you can lead them to. Most facilities have resources available to where they can hand out a sheet, whether they can go somewhere and get assistance in paying bills or things like that nature, like churches and stuff like that.
Pull out that social worker card.
Social worker card. A lot of times this is kind of, it's a lot on, it said that community outreach, the community assistance, what Mario was alluding to, community resources. Watch out for those community resources. Here in Enid, if you have that happen with a client, it's Catholic Charities. There's a lady named Stacy that's there at Catholic Charities, and so Brittany role play with me, making that phone call.
Okay. Wait, am I the?
You're calling because you're the one asking for help. I'm Stacy at Catholic Charities.
Okay.
Ring,
okay,
ring.
so I'm calling.
Maro, you do it with me.
Yeah, no, Maro, you do it.
Okay, Maro, you're asking for help. Your gas is being shut off.
Okay. Ring, ring.
Hello, this is Stacy at Catholic Charities. Can I help?
Hi, Stacy. This is Mario. How are you today?
I'm good, Mario. Good, Mario. How's it going?
I'm not doing very well right now, unfortunately. That's why I'm calling.
I'm sorry to hear that. What's going on?
I had to buy extra groceries this week because I had my grandchildren for the week because of a family emergency. Now I don't have enough money to pay for my gas, and it'll be shut off within the next 48 hours. Is the notice I just received.
Oh man, I'm sorry to hear that. Thanksgiving is a tough time when you've got to spend money on food a lot of times to take care of your family. So it sounds like you're in a tough situation there. So what's your normal gas bill?
During the summertime, it's a little low, but it's starting to get cold outside, so we've had to use the heater a little bit more. So during the wintertime, it's averaging between $120 and $170.
Okay. So it sounds like you're short this month. Would there be a chance that you would be able to make your bill next month?
Yes, I'll be able to pay my bill next month. It's just that this month I'm short, and I've been late in the past. So they've actually, they're threatening to shut my gas off if I don't pay it this month.
Okay. Well, luckily we've had some donations this year, and being the holidays, people have provided a little bit to us. Sometimes we run out, but we do have some funding available for that. So. What I'm going to require you to bring in one of your bills, the overdue bill. Bring that up here with some form of identification, and we'll try to work something out. Okay?
Okay, that sounds great. Could you give me an address? I got your phone number, but I didn't get an address.
That's 1111 Main Street, at the corner of Main and Jefferson. So I'll just ask for Stacy when you get here.
Okay, I will do that. Thank you, Stacy.
Okay, thank you, Mario.
It was like a dramatic movie. I was like, what's going to happen next?
So how good did Mario do there?
Amazing.
Mario was a very good job. Thank you, Mario.
Is that part of CDSA?
No, actually, Catholic Charities,
Because CDSA is on the corner.
and I gave a fake address.
That's Independence.
So sorry. Don't ever go to that, whatever that is.
No, we're all gonna go there.
Get my bill and take that way.
Our teacher said that.
He directed us
Is
all here.
CDSA also another resource here in Enid?
Yes, I would direct people to CDSA. So yeah, you can see that some folks may not have. Mario's obviously got good social skills, so he's able to conduct that with me. But you can see where people, I don't have my bill, or you work through this so they actually think about the situation that they're going to encounter, and so and so other people hearing that in the group, then so I could reach out there if I have the same trouble, or my water got shut off, so maybe I could call somebody else. So again, it's an approach. So you'd have an approach sheet. Each person would fill this out. Who will you talk to? What will you say? What do you predict will happen? And so they will bring this back then with them next week. So this will be their homework, and people will forget it. So you'll have to remember in your notes, okay, what did we do last week? So then you have them then go into during check-in what did happen in reality, because this would have been a part of their community resource that they utilized. The five questions we did during check-in.
And I like that they can use this later as an opportunity when they have to ask for help again to kind of work through it and get an idea. Because for me, like anytime I have to make a phone call, even to like make a doctor's appointment, I kind of script it first so I don't sound like a blubbering fool. So I like that this gives them kind of a chance to kind of get some composure and think it through, because I think that kind of helps everybody to kind of script it in their heads, kind of have an idea of where they're going.
I concur, and especially folks that have just used to street language and street etiquette, which is not like professional etiquette where you're saying hello, yes, thank you, please. It's a different. And if people haven't done it, if people haven't learned it, if that's the way they've grown up and lived, it's a new thing. It's learning a new skill, and it's a safety. It's a way to have safe relationships. Just practicing how to communicate. So there's a lot of things in this. So ideas for commitment. So you want to get a commitment when you check out. So there's your who will you talk to? What will you say? What did you predict will happen? So here's an example of how to fill it out. Even to tell people, and if somebody's illiterate, you can just do this verbally. You don't have to have them, but you give them the sheet anyway. And then so you do the checkout. So the session checkout then is see chapter 2. So let's go ahead and do that briefly, so we get a feel of what it is. It only took how long? That's funny. Okay, so here's the and you will actually give this to them as well, so you can make copies of this. One of the things, if you're working with clients, you have free reign to make as many copies of this as you want to work with clients to give to them. So check out. Name one thing you got out of today's session. Well, hey man, I learned that I could call Catholic Charities with my heater if I was going to lose my gas. What is your new commitment? Well, my commitment is I'm going to call Stacy and see if I can keep my gas up. What community resource will you call? Catholic Charities. So this particular session really led in well to the checkout. Not every session is going to be like what you cover leads to the community resource. This particular one did. So like if there's a session on grounding, it wouldn't necessarily, you're going to have to stretch a little bit sometimes to get them to come up with a community resource. So here's the core concepts of treatment. So again, you would pass this out to folks. Here's the list of treatment topics. So you can copy this and keep it for you, and and your clients. So just going over some of them, like safeties right up front, an introduction to treatment, talking about PTSD. This is detaching from emotional pain. If anybody wants to demonstrate something from this technique, this is really good. There are so many different things to demonstrate from grounding. If somebody wants to do that for their demonstration, this works really well. We did asking for help, honesty, integrating the split self. So those are some of the things that you're going to talk about. Hopefully that recovery, that morning, and then recovering, making a new identity, setting boundaries in relationships.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you feel like it could lend itself to like a rolling group, like where people come in, halfway through and then just continue it until they've seen them all? That's a great question, and yes, I would say that this a lot of times when you do group therapy, it's tough to decipher whether you're going to, everybody needs to start at the same time. Ideally, everybody would start at the same time, so everybody's feeling nervous that first session or two, and then after a while they get more comfortable, kind of like a classroom setting. We're a lot more comfortable than we were with each other, at the beginning. But
we've always been besties.
What Nikki's asking is, what if new people come in? And this would be something that you could utilize with, to help keep it going. So healing from anger, safe coping sheet. So it's got a certificate of achievement, at the end, so they know that they've done something. Let me see, what else did I want to make sure? There's some other resources in here. One of them has here they are. So there's something like 84 different coping skills. And so people, you'll ask them to pick out a coping skill, especially if people are struggling with, what they can do. They can just go down the list and talk about a coping skill they're going to use this week.
Would that be like a commitment, or is that different?
It would be like a commitment. It would be like a commitment. So if they had trouble, sorry, go ahead.
There's a coping skill in there that I get a great response when I do this in a group, and that is the coping skill that says, pretend like you like yourself.
That's good.
That is good.
Yeah, it's really good.
I've used that in groups before, too.
Gang, we're running out of time, so this is actually a lot of this is actually in your book. It is on it begins on page 311. And so next time we'll have some demonstration, and I'll probably talk a little bit more about this, because this is something we're at the very end of our class. And this is something you guys can take out there and you can do. If you're working with people, you can do this. Okay? So, any questions before we end today?
I do have a question. When will we see our grades for the paper, the term paper?
and presentations.
Yeah.
You take your time, sir.
Yeah. Hopefully soon.
Okay, that'll work.
I do know that folks that have given presentations, there's nobody that's gotten below a B on presentations. So those have gone very, very well. And as far as papers, I'm gonna have to get back to you on that. I will get them graded. Obviously, I have deadlines I have to meet, so I'm sorry. No. I hope to get those back soon.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. I was just looking for it.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, gang. You guys have a good week. I'll see you Monday.
I don't know what my sign was for Tiffany's class.
She said they'll be graded this weekend.